Hello students, in this module we will be doing the later part of the non-cooperation movement. In the previous module we did about the causes and the main events that led to the non-cooperation movement to be taken up by Gandhi. In this one we will be doing first of all the most important activities during the non-cooperation movement. Here we see that enthusiastically, everyone in the nation responded to the call of Gandhi for non-cooperation movement, and therefore people were ready to practice non-cooperation in all spheres just to stand against the British supremacy. Here we see what were the important things. Lawyers such as Deshbandhu Chitranjan and Motilal Nehru, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, they all gave up their legal practices because they were working in the court which were of government. So they gave up their practices. Next we see students left the schools and colleges, those which were controlled or were totally under the dominion of the British Empire, British India government, sorry. And then we see the Congress boycotted the elections of the legislatures because obviously that was straight away related to the political working. Next was charkhas were manufactured, and these spinning wheels were basically made with the purpose of Swadeshi to be brought into the you can say scenario, because Gandhi somewhere wanted that non-cooperation movement should have the main programs as Swadeshi and boycott that we did yesterday. So these charkhas were used for spinning the thread and then making it into a proper garment of khadi in a way. Next we see the Jamia Millia Islamia was established, Bihar Vidyapeeth, Kashi Vidyapeeth and Gujarat Vidyapeeth. Such universities were established during this time, and these national universities were established with the purpose of promoting education through the Indian particular you can say from the Indian perspective for the Indians, and to be governed and looked after by the Indian people itself. It should not have any particular interference of the British. Next is Rabindranath Tagore and many other distinguished citizens of India renounced the titles and awards that were given to them. These were the laureates, and when these laureates were honored by the British, they were given some really good titles, honors, but as a matter of fact, to mark the non-cooperation, they gave up their titles also, the honors that were given to them. And one of them was Rabindranath Tagore, who was an ace writer of that time, dramatist, and he gave up all these things, the honors that were given to him, just to mark that how much they all are into one particular notion of having the non-cooperation movement, or not to not to be together with the British government in doing evil, because that was the purpose of non-cooperation movement. People contributed generally to the finance and the to finance the movement, so that for the proper going on of the movement, people gave donations, which was basically the fundraising for the movement to be carried on. Shops selling foreign goods, liquors were picketed, they were closed, they were stopped from selling all those things. People did not do it violently, but they were requested or they were asked to close down. And foreign cloth was burnt in the marketplaces. This is the common thing we talk about, the boycott, that the bonfires were done on the street crossroads and the foreign cloth was burnt over there. It was not only foreign cloths, but most of the foreign products were burnt over there. In Malabar, the Moplas rebelled against the authorities. The rebellion assumed a communal character when they killed many of the Hindus as well. So that was one of the other particular events that happened during that time in the Malabars. But besides that, we can say when Prince of Wales came to India in 1921 and he came towards Mumbai, it was the entire area of Mumbai observed a huge hartal, and it was very evident that British Indians are not at all in you can say proper harmony with British, and they are totally against them. They totally want their particular demands to be put up and to be heard, and that is why they are not going to be the partners of British in any evil doing. They are totally in non-cooperation. They are not going to be with them. The mob turned unruly and riots followed. The police opened fired. This turmoil of 3 days killed 59 people. So from here we can see, because of this hartal, gradually, and the Malabar incident, gradually we see that this non-cooperation movement started turning out to be little violent, which was not from the Indian side, but it was mainly from the other side. And the British were oppressing, or you can say they were trying to suppress the movement, and for this they used the force. And as a result, we can say over here in Mumbai's Hartal also, Mumbai Hartals or Bombay Hartal at that time we should say. So over there 59 people were killed because British authorities opened fire the people, those who were agitating and becoming little unruly. So here we see that because of all these particular measures that were taken by the British, even Indian people, those who were following the non-cooperation movement, gradually we can say they started moving towards that particular path, which led to violence. And the same thing happened, because of which this non-cooperation movement had to be stopped immediately by Gandhi, and that event was something that took place in Chauri Chaura. Now here we will read about Chauri Chaura. Chauri Chaura is a small village in, you can say, Gorakhpur, a district in Uttar Pradesh. So then this Chauri Chaura movement, what particularly happened was on 5th February 1922, and it was a huge procession of around 3,000 people, peasants especially. They were marching towards the police station to protest for certain particular things, and the police officers started beating the volunteers. They did not see the entire crowd coming. They saw a few people coming over there who were little away ahead of the other crowd. So they started beating them, not realizing that a huge crowd is still following them. Now when they had started beating them, after this the crowd chased these policemen, and seeing the huge crowd chasing them, these policemen ran towards the police station. Now when these people were protesting at the evening time, you can say they had the lamps with them, the mashals we call. So they were having those lights, and they came along with them, chasing the policemen almost to the police station. Now these policemen, 22 of them, they locked themselves inside the police station, and they were not ready to come out for any particular reason, because they knew if they go out they will be killed by the angry crowd. But they were not spared, and the angry crowd burned the policemen along with the 22 policemen inside it. This was a huge shock for Gandhi, because he had always followed the policy of ahimsa, and when this happened, it took him back that his own people, those who were following his own particular you can say movement of non-cooperation, turned out to be violent and took away the lives of 22 policemen. Whether they were foes or friends, that did not matter, but it was violation of the particular concept of his andolans, and that was ahimsa. They became violent, and so is as a believer of ahimsa, Gandhi was taken aback by this, and he decided to withdraw non-cooperation movement, because he realized that in many parts it is becoming unruly, violent, and even now has broken the concept of ahimsa. So on 12th February, that means almost within a week, that particular movement was taken back. The Chauri Chaura incident took place on 5th Feb, and on 12th of Feb, it was non-cooperation movement suspended. Now this action of Gandhi of suspending the non-cooperation movement did not go very well with many of the other leaders, like Motilal Nehru, Lala Lajpat Rai, Subhash Chandra Bose called it national calamity. They said it is not because of the movement that this event took place, it is because the nature and the atmosphere is such in the country that things like this will occur, and for that reason we should not take back our particular movement, which is basically focused on ahimsa. But Gandhi did not listen to that, and Gandhi assured Nehru, if the thing had not been suspended, we would have been leading a non-violent struggle. So as a matter of fact, Gandhi suspending the law-breaking part of the movement and asked congressmen to pay attention to the constructive programs. So he did not allow them to have this non-cooperation movement go any longer, and he asked all of them to not to look over this particular thing, but to look at the constructive programs of the other particular things that they can work on. That is removal of untouchability and Hindu-Muslim unity and popularization of Swadeshi and Khadi. These things should be the one which should be stressed on. But later we see Gandhi was also arrested by the British, and that was on the basis of propagating seditious meetings. That means secret meetings. He was arrested on March 10, 1922 and was sentenced a 6 years imprisonment. Now there was someone, you can say, a vacuum or a particular group without a leader, because for 6 years he had been imprisoned. Gandhi was released after 2 years, and that was because of his ill health. So once again, Gandhi came back to the political ground. Instead of 6 years, he stayed in prison for the next 2 years, from 1922 to 1924. During this time, it was various activities which took place, but here we need to focus on various things, or the impact of non-cooperation movement in general, we can say, in the society. In this module, we will focus on this. Here we have the activities and suspension of the Chauri Chaura of the non-cooperation movement took place because of the Chauri Chaura incident. Besides that, we see impact of the non-cooperation movement is, first of all, this movement became a mass movement. The huge number of people were involved in it. Then Congress became a revolutionary organization by this particular movement, by this particular thing that was started by Gandhi. Non-cooperation movement made Congress a revolutionary meeting or revolutionary organization. Next was Hindu-Muslim unity. It also led to the Hindu-Muslim unity because Gandhi had asked his people to lay stress on the Hindu-Muslim unity. Besides that, it promoted social reforms also, and popularized the concept of Swaraj. So this became some of the important points or important impacts of the non-cooperation movement. So we will do them in detail. Here we see first is the Indian national movement for the first time in history acquired a real mass base, because now not only the young leaders or the very dynamic or educated political leaders were involved in it, but even common men, peasants, middle class, the lawyers and educationists, the children, students, women especially, all of them were involved in these particular movements, because this was not something which had to be done only on a political particular front. It could be done in any particular level of life, and everybody could take part in this. So that is why it was the first time when the entire country was involved in a particular movement. So it became really a universal in character for the Indian fight, or you can say a particular movement that was for the and with the masses. Next was, it instilled confidence among the people. It generated a desire for freedom, because now people understand or realized that if they come together, they can stand against the British, and they can fight against the British to fighting for their freedom, getting independence and getting rid of the British rule. So these events, which were partly successful now, they gave the confidence to the people to fight more for their freedom, because they thought it is not a thought which is unachievable. It is something which can be achieved. Next is the Congress became a revolutionary movement, as we did here. It transformed the Indian National Congress from a deliberative assembly into an organization for action. Till now, people felt that they are only good for negotiations, deciding and planning passively. But here they could see that the work of the Congress entire group was very, very active, and now they have been a group of the action makers or action people who do the action. They are not just sitting and merely having negotiations and talks, but rather they are implementing and showing the actions, involving people to be a part of those actions. And that is why this entire concept of the organization of Congress changed into a revolutionary group, which was really working hard for the freedom and for the betterment of the country, getting them rid of the clutches of British. Next is, it fostered Hindu-Muslim unity. It was, which could be seen in the merger of the Khilafat movement now. Because of this Khilafat movement, it was a very nice opportunity which was at hand, and Gandhi made the best use of it, getting the Hindus and Muslims together, and this was good enough to shake the British foundations, because now they realized if these two communities stick together and work together, it will be really a testing time for the British government to stay as long as they want. So it will be difficult for them to keep their strong foot over here, and that means they will have to leave sooner if these actions prevail for a longer period of time. That means the Hindus and Muslims working together against the British. Next is, it promoted social reforms. Now here we can say, as a consequence of the non-cooperation movement, it is several steps were taken in the direction of prohibition and removal of untouchabilities, and then many national schools were opened, which were opened and run and managed by the Indian people, or you can say Indian dominion, so it has no interference of the British. Besides that, the boycott of the foreign goods made it a good opportunity for the promotion of Indian made goods, the Swadeshi we are talking about, Khadi and all those things. It not only gave employment to the Indian people who are unemployed or had no purpose in life, but rather it also made country self-sufficient, or showed them the way how they can be self-reliant and they don't have to depend on the British for their particular requirements of day-to-day life. So that is how it made the country come out of many social evils and problems, and social reforms brought new, you can say, a line of progressive thought in the mindset of the common Indians as well as the leaders on the whole. Besides that, we see it spread nationalism to every part of the country. Now, as we know, more and more people were involved in the national movements. They got an opportunity to fight for their freedom, fight for their nation, and take a standing for their particular rights and for their requirements and problems. So we can say it filled everyone with this feeling of nationalism, that they should be fighting for their nation because it is their nation. They have certain responsibilities. They realized what great changes they can do if they come together, and that is something which filled them in their mind and hearts the thought of having a freedom, having some feelings for fighting for the nation to get freedom. So that is how we can say this particular non-cooperation movement also filled their hearts with the feeling of nationalism, and not only in a particular segment but in the entire country, in the entire nation, because people came to know about how one part of the country is fighting against such things, how the other party is standing for their rights, and so on. They motivated each other. Next, we see it popularized the cult of Swaraj. The goal of non-cooperation movement was to attain Swaraj, and when people were filled with the thought of Swaraj, that means having their own rule, ruling their country by their own people and getting out of the clutches of the British, this itself, the thought was very soothing for many of the people, and they had dreamt it for a long period of time, that they should be their own rulers. And now when they saw the possibilities of getting or achieving this kind of thing, they really felt that this should be their main goal, and they all started working for the achievement of Swaraj, or you can say the self-rule. So many people started joining the movements just for the sake of attaining Swaraj and getting rid of the clutches of British. So these were some of the great impacts which non-cooperation movement had on the Indian community at that time. Next, we have the factors leading up to civil disobedience movement. Here we see, after this non-cooperation movement and its suspension, a new particular movement was started. A call was given by Gandhi, and this call was given for the civil disobedience movement, and that was in 1930. This movement was to be different from the non-cooperation movement in certain senses, because you might say, how is it different from non-cooperation, and how is civil disobedience different? So here we see it was sought to bring the working of the government to a standstill. Non-cooperation means we are not going to cooperate with you. Civil disobedience means, obviously it means very much similar to it, but its purpose was even stronger, and that was to bring the working of the government to a standstill, not let them do the work or policies they want to bring out or they want to implement. And by not cooperating with their administration, where the civil disobedience movement was an attempt at paralyzing the administration. Their main purpose was not any other thing but just to stop the working of the government. Paralyzing the administration means stopping them from taking out or implementing their policies and whatever the measures they want to bring out. The circumstances that led to the civil disobedience movements are as follows. First is the Simon Commission. In November 1927, remember when we were doing non-cooperation movement, we stopped at 1922 and 1924. Gandhi was released from the prison, but in between this 1922 and 26 and all these 3-4 years, certain activities took place. So regarding that only, we talk in 1927, it was the British government appointed a secretary of Indian state of British, you can say commission, which was also known as the Simon Commission, because it was given out by Sir John Simon, so it was named after him, to investigate the need for constitutional reforms. The commission was composed by 7 British members. There was no particular Indian member who should be looking after the problems of India. It was all British. So it simply meant that no particular reasons or no particular points taken in will be in the benefit or in the favor of the country, India, or Indians in a way you should say. It had no Indian members. This was seen as a violation of the principle of self-determination and a deliberate insult to the self-respect of the Indians. That means they felt that British still feel that Indians are not even capable enough of thinking about what points should be added. They should not be included in this particular commission, and that is why all British members were included in the commission, and they had to decide what constitutional reforms should be made in the country. So that was not taken as very well with the Indian, because they felt that Indians should be represented at least by one particular Indian. At its Madras session in 1927, presided by Dr. Ansari in the National Congress, they decided to boycott the Simon Commission, and therefore it was decided that Simon Commission will not be accepted and will not be followed over here. They are not going to be taken or accepted in this particular part of country. The Muslim League and the Hindu Mahasabha decided to support the Congress. So here again we see that the Hindus and Muslims were working together for this concept of opposing the Simon Commission. And on February 3, the day or the commission reached Bombay, that commission means the members, 7 members, they all reached here, and all India Hartal was organized just to show how much they have been opposing this particular commission. Wherever the commission went, it was greeted with hartals and the black flags, and on those black flags the slogans were written, "Go back Simon," or "Simon, go back." So this was just to show that Simon Commission is not required in India. We do not welcome this, and we are not accepting any of the points that you give in the Simon Commission. The government used brutal suppression and even lathi charged many of the people, those who were showing their opposition and who were the part of the processions and hartals. But Lala Lajpat Rai was one particular leader who was mercilessly beaten during this particular time, and it was in a protest on October 30, 1928. While he was lathi charged, one of the particular inspector, that was one of the British policemen, Saunders, he hit him with a lathi on his head. Now when he was hit badly, after that he was beaten even further, but it was a serious injury which led him to be bedridden for over a month. And when he was hit on October, within a month, by the end of November, he died. He succumbed to his injuries, and this was something which was a big blow to the nationalism in that part, and their people became even furious, not against the Inspector Saunders, but even against the British and their way of suppressing the movements. The recommendations we'll do for today in this module, the last thing, that what were the recommendations that were given in Simon Commission, which was something which was not accepted by most of the Indians, or rather you can say all of the Indians. So here the recommendations were: diarchy should be abolished and there should be complete autonomy in the province, including the Department of Law and Order. Diarchy means dual government will not be there, it will be abolished, and there will be complete autonomy, complete rule will be given. But the governor should be given overriding powers in certain matters like the internal security. Governor will be having all the overall supervisory and all the controlling powers. That means whatever decisions the government take, even if it is Indian, they are not going to implement it properly unless and until it is accepted, approved by or agreed upon by the governor, and governor will not be anyone but a British. So that still meant that it will be ruled by the British only. Indians will decide various things, but ultimately the power who's going to pass it will be the British. Provincial legislative councils should be enlarged. Federal government at the center should embrace not only British India but also the princely states. Even the federal government will take the that princely states also under their particular domain. And then the Governor General should select and appoint members of his cabinet. So it will be totally his decision that whatever members he want to take in his cabinet. British troops and British officers should stay on in Indian regiment for many more years. That means even if you get the independence, still the British people and British officers will be staying here for many more years and nobody can ask them to leave. High courts should be under the administrative control of the Government of India, and here Government of India means the British. So High Court and law order will be under their control. The communal representation was to continue, so that the gap between the Hindus and Muslims and the communities should always be maintained, and that is how dividing the country into various communities or communal areas. So these were some of the things, though they did many of the points under this particular recommendation which were like appeasing the Indians, but Indians were not appeased by this, and they really decided that we do not want Simon Commission, because it is a commission which has been given by the British. None of the Indian members have been taken into the consideration of making or forming this commission, or neither we can say they must have talked about the basic requirements of the Indians. It is always a superficial thing which has been prepared by British, not really understanding what Indians need. So these were all the things, recommendations in the Simon Commission. Here next topic is Nehru Report and the civil disobedience movement, that we'll be doing in the next module. So with this we come to the end of the module.